I'm just gonna come out and say it, I love Jey Uso. He has been an all-star player for the WWE since the very beginning of the Bloodline story as Roman's first challenger. Which, in the beginning, mind you, was a bit vexing to think that one half of these guys, yeah, remember when they were doing this, could be in contention for a world championship against the biggest star in the company. However, against all the odds, Jey over the last several years has gone on to endear himself to the larger WWE audience, and generally speaking has contributed incredibly well to the overall on-screen WWE product. Jey of course separated from the Bloodline in a way that many felt was kinda bad, with Jimmy being the one to turn on him. Honestly, despite how weird it went down at SummerSlam, I have been digging the slow burn rivalry that they've left on simmer since it began. But lately, and by lately I really just mean the Royal Rumble, I've been thinking to myself, how do we get there? How do we get Jimmy versus Jey? Seeing as the major heat of that heel turn from back at SummerSlam from Jimmy is more or less gone by this point, and to put it frankly, doing a match over it now wouldn't fit the Jey character at all. Like, my brother in Christ, his whole story has been to remove himself from the Bloodline. More specifically, as it pertains to this video, he's been separated from his brother and set to carve out his own path. So when you really sit back and think about it, why would Jey even bother going after Jimmy at this point? And therein lies the problem. Jimmy has to go after Jey, and more precisely, there needs to be something for both of them to compete over. So with that long intro out of the way, let's get to talking about Jey Uso versus Gunther, as well as all of the reasons I personally believe Jey needs to beat Gunther and win that Intercontinental title. If you go on to enjoy the video, please be sure to give it a like and let me know what you think in the comments down below. Okay, so first and foremost, our two major players, Gunther and Jey. The pair had a beautiful confrontation on Raw during the February 5th, 2024 edition of the show, in a promo segment where they both talked each other up, noting each other's accomplishments. With Gunther on the show celebrating 600 days as Intercontinental Champion, as well as Jey's contributions as one half of the longest reigning tag champions in history, Gunther noted specifically that as such, Jey only contributed half the work for that reign, unlike himself. The two had a brawl which Gunther got the upper hand during with the help of Imperium, but this really got me thinking, what if Jey won? Now, over the last year and a half, Gunther has taken on all comers for that title and has genuinely raised the prestige higher than I've ever seen in my time as a fan. Frankly put, the Intercontinental title is basically as good as gold. There's a reason why people believe Seth's title is actually the mid-card one and Gunther's is the main event, but that's a topic for another time. But to put it simply, people really love what Gunther has done with the Intercontinental title, and as such, many hope that he just never loses it. And while I wouldn't go quite that far with it myself, I can definitely understand the sentiment. However, while a majority of more mid-card talent could receive a major rub for winning the title off the back of this massive title reign, such as guys like Johnny Gargano or Chad Gable, God I love them both so much, I think the title should change hands off the back of a story and with the intention to transition into another. Now, simply put, the story between Jey and Gunther is super simple. Jey sees a lot of Roman in the ring general, a long reigning champion who constantly talks down to his subordinates as well as he thinks the world of himself and his authority as champion. In a sense, Gunther is just a proxy for Roman Reigns since the tribal chief has moved on. But in order for Jey to move on and prove himself right in his belief that he is a main eventer, he needs to win singles gold. That said, Jey and Gunther would ideally have their match be the opener for Elimination Chamber or perhaps the main event of an upcoming Raw. The in-ring story of the match can be very simple, with Jey being the obvious Dave to Gunther's Goliath. For the match, Jey would just sell all of Gunther's offense wonderfully, and I really like the visual idea of Gunther somehow chopping Jey's crop top off his chest. Don't ask me how they would do it, but I would like to see it. For the end of the match, you would have Jey win, preferably without a roll-up or anything too shenanigan-y, because let's face it, we would all mauled super hard if that title reign didn't end clean. Plus, if you do it clean, it would just make for a smoother transition in Gunther's rise to the World Heavyweight Championship. You know, seeing as he would have no business re-challenging for the Intercontinental title. Also, if you're wondering what I would personally do for Gunther's Mania plans, I would make the World Heavyweight Championship match a fatal 4-way with Seth, Drew, Sammy, and Gunther, which would see Sammy win after pinning Seth. Oh, and then Damian cashes in, and then we have some big ol' heel heat. Anyways, back to the point of this video. Jey winning the IC title is significant for a number of reasons. First of all, it would be the first singles championship he ever won in WWE, which seems to be a point that commentary is making sure that we know, and he'll be doing it as a guy who is currently, checks notes, 13 years into his WWE career, and it feels long overdue, honestly. However, another big reason it's so significant is the simple fact that the first and only singles title Jey's father Rikishi held was the very same Intercontinental Championship. Well, except it was shaped more like a bath mat back then than a championship title, but you still get the point. You see, this era of WWE seems very insistent on playing off the past. So much so that guys like CM Punk and Cody Rhodes have talked about their time in OVW, or even the history lesson for the family tree of the full bloodline from Rocky at the WrestleMania 40 press conference. So for Jey to win the only singles championship that his father held as his first singles title, it would make total sense. Additionally, that title, which holds significance to Jey because of that reason, would hold similar significance for Jimmy for all the same reasons. Which wheels me back to one of my prior points. We know that there exists baggage emotionally for the characters of Jimmy and Jey Uso from what happened between them. And those loose ends do at some point need to be tied up, and we need to explore all of this. However, to tie these together in a way that is satisfying narratively for those of us who have enjoyed their stories so far, there needs to be a link re-established between them. As it stands currently right now, there is practically zero heat between the two of them. Yeah, they don't like each other, but that doesn't mean they're just gonna have a match, a blood feud out of nowhere. And realistically, what better link could there possibly be for the two of them than a callback to their father and a feud over a title that he himself held dear? It can literally just be a contest of quote-unquote which one of us is better for Jimmy, and for Jey it would be about that he was never trying to be better than Jimmy and he was only ever doing his best for their family. I say that because if you remember back at SummerSlam, Jimmy's motivation for turning on Jey in the first place was for fear of inferiority. He was scared that Jey would end up just like Roman if he took the Undisputed Championship as well as the title of Tribal Chief. And some people felt this story beat didn't make up for how much the overall Bloodline story had jumped the shark by this point, but for me personally, it makes a ton of sense, especially when you contextualize it like this. I can't say this from the perspective of a twin, but I have brothers. And if you have brothers or siblings in general, you know it from anyone and everyone around you growing up. It can be really hard to always be compared with them.
You understand my position, Jimmy? I'm Jey.
It's something that basically every single sibling ever has had to endure at some point. And in the case of Jimmy Uso, I reckon it's a lot of the same from a character standpoint. So after Jey wins the Intercontinental title and acknowledges how big it is for him to do that, I'd like to see an appearance from Rikishi himself even. Now this might sound a little odd considering, you know, where was he for all of the other Bloodline stuff, but I digress, we're gonna have to just ignore it, I suppose. You can just have Rikishi come out and congratulate his son Jey on winning the title. You know, really put over how massive an accomplishment that the title was for him to win back in the day, and have his promo end with him saying how proud of Jey he is. This would prompt either a response on the night or later on from Jimmy, who has spent the better part of the last 9 months looking for any and all approval / validation he can get from Roman Reigns. And with the Tribal Chief's temper flaring as he's dealing with, you know, Cody Rhodes and Seth Rollins at the moment, he would tell Jimmy to find a way to take care of his brother and rip that championship away from him. And in the weeks following that, we would see Jimmy trying to talk to Solo about how their father just came back to WWE for the first time in forever just to congratulate Jey instead of either of them. Solo, ideally in this position, would just stare forward at a wall like he always does, and this further would just drive a wedge between Jimmy and the Bloodline. Even with this wedge clearly appearing though, his marching orders are clear. Jimmy needed to take the title from Jey, who in the interim would be defending his title on Raw and keeping up the momentum of being a workhorse champion similar to how Gunther was previously with the belt. But after one of his defenses, Jimmy would stare down Jey in the ring before grabbing a microphone and cutting a promo on how he needed that title, how Jey wasn't the better twin, and how he was going to prove it at WrestleMania. Jey raises the Intercontinental title high and points to the sign while Jimmy nods along. However, in the weeks leading up to Mania, Rikishi would be seen talking to both of his sons, trying and pleading and begging them not to fight each other like this. Ultimately, Rikishi would have to relent, but in doing so would strike a deal with Adam Pearce to serve as the special guest referee / enforcer for that match, simply because I think it would be good to see them go all in with the melodrama of it. And inevitably, as you would imagine, this would all build to that Mania match for the Intercontinental title between the brothers, which I would personally book to see Jey win. However, on the mic after the match with them both still in the ring with their father watching on, I'd have Jey cut a promo talking about how they came up together. They became the best tag team of all time together, and that even growing up, they always fought. But in the end, they always forgave each other because that's what brothers do. The pair would then embrace and then recreate this clip with their father from Raw on years ago. It would be incredibly funny and you know it. But seriously, I think we're going to see Gunther move his sights onto the world title soon, and as such, I really think the Intercontinental title should be moved over to someone who can tell a really good story with it. And frankly put, I know that Jimmy and Jey can do that. Which, to be fair, some people would argue that Jimmy versus Jey doesn't even need a title. But the narrative ties between Jey winning the same title his father did and Jimmy being jealous because of that is something that I personally find way too good to pass up. Additionally, I am firmly of the opinion that Jey winning a singles title at this point in his career is unbelievably overdue. Also, just imagine the post-libation press conference if he wins it over in Australia. That said, I've explained just about all I can about why I personally believe Jey Uso needs to win the Intercontinental Championship. What do you think? Does he need it? Should Gunther ever lose it? Will Rikishi dance with his boys again? Let me know in the comments down below. And hey ho, while you're headed down that way, be sure to leave the video a like if you enjoyed, and subscribe if you're new and want to see more content like this in the future. Anyways, I'm going to go off and rewatch some more clips of the Fastlane 2023 press conference because simply put, it brings me joy. As always, I hope you stay safe and be bold, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.